All right, so we'd like to welcome everyone to our webinar on digestion. This is our third webinar that we host at the Raj, and the Raj is America's premier Ayurveda health center. We've been offering Panchakarma for 33 years, the Ayurveda rejuvenation and purification process that is incredibly supportive of health. And what we want to do is just connect with our Raj family and all those who are joining us for these webinars to provide you with insights about Ayurveda. And we don't really want to go so much into the doshas and your body type and that kind of thing. It's all over the internet. We really want to bring information that sometimes you can't really find it so easily. And in the last two webinars, we have been focusing in on environmental toxins and how they impact our health. And just in our second webinar, we were talking about finding healthy, nutritious, and delicious food, looking for organic food, and what are those best sources for organic food. And now we want to continue along this line in terms of talking about digestion. So first, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Candace Badgett. Along with my husband, Rogers, we founded the Raj 33 years ago. And I'm so excited to introduce all of you to Dr. Shankari Wegman. And Shankari has her PhD in integrative medicine, and she received her degree at Maharishi International University, which is just down the road from the Raj. And Maharishi International University is the only accredited university offering an integrative health program with an emphasis on Ayurveda. So there's a BA program, a master's program, and a PhD program. And most interestingly enough is the fellowship program. And a fellowship program is a very special program. It's 2 years. It's just for medical professionals. And you have to meet a lot of very high standards to be able to gain that status or accreditation as a fellowship program. And I want to bring that up because Shankari was very instrumental in creating the curriculum for that program. So she is not only well-versed in Ayurveda, but she's well-versed in sharing that information with medical doctors, nurses, healthcare professionals. So she is assistant professor, she is assistant administrator, the head of that department, and we're really excited to have Shankari with us today, who can really give us some great insights into digestion. And we've all heard about digestion now everywhere we turn because modern medicine has finally figured out that digestion is absolutely key, not just to breaking down food, but impacting so many systems in the physiology, supporting health on so many levels. So we all know the gut is now considered a hub in the physiology and has very intimate connection to the brain through the vagus nerve. But I just want to now turn it over to Shankari to give us this 6,000-year-old perspective on digestion that modern medicine is just now finally catching up and appreciating. So Shankari, please let us know about the Ayurvedic perspective on digestion.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much for such a kind introduction. And it's a joy to be here with the Raj family. It does feel like family to go to the Raj, and I'm very grateful for everything that you're doing to just bring this out into the world even more. And I'm grateful to all of my teachers for helping guide me into this deeper understanding of Ayurveda, both at the level of the mind and the heart, and just really trying to integrate it into just daily practice. So Ayurveda, as you said, is the 6,000 plus year old science. And so just grateful for the teachers who've kind of been the boat through this ocean of knowledge. And I just want to say, just even this word diet and digestion is very linked, and we have different connotations or understanding of this word, digestion, and then also diet. Digestion, if you ask a modern medical doctor, usually, or really anybody, we think of digestion as maybe related to how food is moving through our body. And maybe we might say my digestion is slow. We might say it's fast, or, I have a fast metabolism, or sometimes it's also linked to bowel movements more than actual digestion. So people understand this word very differently from one side. From
That's
Ayurveda, we have a different understanding of this word. So even just this word, etymologically speaking, from Latin, it comes from the root gestation, or gest, which means to carry. And when you put die in front of it, it's a separation. So you're going away, like whatever is coming, we're separating it. So digestion is just that separation of that food coming into its smaller molecules. And Ayurveda looks at how that function is able to fully process what is being received by the body, breaking it down into its smaller constituents for reassembling back into the whole. What Marsha Ayurveda really brings out is a beautiful understanding of digestion, not just in terms of this ability, but also what is diet. Diet is understood, Marsha just brings this out so beautifully. He says that diet is anything that's taken from any field of perception through any sense of perception, any mode of mind, and any mode of intellect. So
okay. So
diet.
hold on one second here, because this is fascinating. And that is when we talk about digestion, what you're bringing out here is that it's not just the food we eat.
Right.
Every sensory experience we have is, in essence, food. It's, in essence, what we take in and we metabolize.
That's
And
it. Anything coming in through the senses, we're taking it in. And so digestion is expanded. Usually we think of it as food, but it's also how we're digesting our experiences, how we're digesting our emotions, how we're digesting what we're seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, tasting, how we're moving through the world, and how we're able to digest that, how we're able to process it. So that ability to digest something is not just limited to food, but
mm,
it's really such an important fundamental process of how we move in this relative world, how we're able to integrate all of the different sensory experiences, including that sense of taste to, bring that food and give that energy to the body, but how we're really able to digest and process and metabolize anything coming in through the senses, make meaning of it, and really for the purpose of maintaining that value of balance as we move through space and time. So that word digestion is such an expanded understanding, and it's fundamental. It's the root cause for almost every single thing of how we maintain balance, or how something might shift into imbalance from Ayurveda. So there's a saying that Ayurveda says, Roga sarvepi mandagno. It just means the root cause of any imbalance lies in poor digestion. So digestion, again, is just the root. So how do we strengthen it? How do we maintain it? Is really just this beautiful field that Ayurveda explores
that's
in so many different ways.
that is an amazing principle, that the root of any imbalance, is digestion. And so, of course, we can look in terms of the breakdown of food, and we can look at it that way, but we have to keep in mind that every experience we have is
That's right.
impacting the physiology. And
That's
this is
right.
where mind and body are so intimately linked. Emotional experiences are going to impact our health. So, how we're processing everything we see, we hear, And it makes, the one thing I'm thinking of here is that other saying in Ayurveda, sort of their fundamental basic tenet is you have a choice. And
Mm.
so now that you're talking about digestion in terms of everything we experience,
Yeah.
then we realize to maintain health, to allow human potential to evolve to higher states of consciousness, we have to be not only alert to what we eat, but what movies are we watching? What people are we interacting with their impact on us? And this
Right.
whole thing of you have a choice, I'm just reminded that this is the gift of Ayurveda because it educates us about what kind of choices we have to make. So this is a beautiful point that you just enlightened us all about. So thank you, and please continue.
Well, no, it's such a, I mean, it's something that we all feel, we can, even what you're bringing out about emotions, sometimes we might say, oh, that felt like a gut punch, or, we hold our stomach, because we feel it impacted right here. And so sometimes, if we are emotional or if we're experiencing something, that's why Ayurveda has so many different principles that help support proper digestion. And one of them is just, eating in a settled atmosphere. So eating in an environment where you feel settled, taking the time just to pause before we eat. That, I mean, even digestion, that whole process even begins with just the thought of food. We haven't even received the food, but just the thought of food starts that whole cascade of, the different enzymes required to break that food down, for example. So, how we're thinking, how we are feeling is so important. So, just an important, simple principle is just taking a moment to appreciate the food, giving gratitude for the food. Just, maybe just having our attention on it, eating slowly, all of that can help.
It's kind of like the physiological uh, justification, you could almost say, for saying grace before you eat.
Right.
That there's some actually there's an impact on the physiology when you just sit down and close your eyes and express gratitude for the
Yeah,
meal that you have. And there you are, you're already just in that process. You're just right in the best frame of mind and frame of feeling to digest the food.
that's right. And then just
Optimal,
having
optimal.
that gratitude, helps connect with so many other parts of that food process. Who made the food, like the farmers, from where the food, the land, so we feel connected to our greater environment, not just localized to that one meal, but just
Mhm.
grateful for the whole process that went into this food in front of us. And again, always when I'm saying food, linking it to everything that we're seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, etc. We're digesting that as well. So, even how we cook the food, I feel like when I eat any of my mother's cooking, it just tastes better, because she's putting her love and attention into it. When I cook for my children, I'm always like, thinking about them and their faces. So it's a different experience in cooking the food, and serving the food for them, and watching them eat. I feel as if I'm also eating. So, there's so much joy in the whole process that we're also metabolizing. So just that principle of eating in a settled atmosphere, eating, just with the attention on the food is such an important reminder for me, because I'm also guilty of, oh, I have to do this and run around. So it's just such a good reminder for me, or even just to pause while eating, chewing, for example. Otherwise we can just finish a whole thing of whatever it is and not really have our attention on, am I full? Maybe I'm actually full right now. And sometimes even, just to pause and think of, is it hunger? Is it actually thirst? Is it an emotional response to something? So really being, referring back to oneself. So that self-referral process always guides us into, when to eat, how much to eat, what to eat, how to eat. So the whole process is very simple and joyful.
You're bringing up another interesting point when you're talking about, am I full? You know, uh, am I still hungry, or do I, need to keep eating, or do I not need to keep eating? It
Right.
comes back to the other beautiful Ayurveda principle of making sure uh, that each meal contains all six tastes. And I find that to be an amazingly powerful principle for walking away from a meal feeling satisfied, as
Right.
opposed to, all right, I just had a great meal, but I need something else. We all know that experience. I need something else. I need something more. And we had for the ice cream or whatever. But anyway, tell us about these six tastes and how when that's when those are there in the meal is satisfying.
So beautiful. There's six tastes from Ayurveda, and each of that, the taste is known as rasa. So rasa really means that which is nourishing. So each taste has a nourishing influence on the physiology. These six tastes are sweet, sour, salty, pungent, bitter, and astringent. The first three, sweet, sour, and salty, I think our society is very familiar with. Very often fast food has a very high sweet taste or high salty taste, high sour taste. The pungent, bitter, and astringent are maybe a little bit less common, but pungent meaning that spice value. Bitter, has that more of that bitter quality. Leafy greens have that bitter taste, and astringent is there's a little bit of a drying effect. So I always think of astringent as if you were to bite into a unripe banana, just kind of
Mhm.
dry in the mouth. You want some water. But when Ayurveda is talking about sweet, sour, salty, we're not talking about excess sweet. We're talking about the sweet in carrots, the sweet in grains like rice. Salt, just natural salt. Sour, just with the lemons. So it's all very natural. And each of the tastes are made up of two of the five elements. So the sweet taste, for example, is made up of earth and water. So it's the heaviest taste. So it's very grounding. So sometimes if we have so much going on and like maybe we're a little anxious or worried, we might reach for that sweet snack because the sweet taste is grounding. So it's helping that anxiety feel kind of anchored. But instead of maybe choosing, like you brought out choice earlier, instead of perhaps choosing that sweet on a very high, big level, we could, maybe have more of a healthy kind of sweet, maybe some warm rice pudding or like, some stewed fruit. I mean, something simple that's easily digestible by the body. So the taste is always, each of the tastes, when we include them, it creates a harmony, it creates a satisfaction. Each has a specific function in the body. So including all six tastes, and we can do this very simply with the churnas, which is a spice mixture. So they have spice mixtures for vata and pitta and kapha. Because a practical question is, well, how do I do this? I have different people in the family, they all have different needs. How do you do it? So a spice mixture is a very simple way for each person just to kind of, have that balance in accordance with their own specific dosha. And so you might find that when you are including the six tastes, the cravings are less. You feel satisfied. Like you said, we're not like, what more can I eat? um,
Exactly.
yes.
You mentioned something about different foods being made of different elements. In other words, that kind of more earth value or that fire value, which would be, of course, spicy, hot, spicy food would have that fire element, and how all foods are connected to those fundamental building blocks of creation, which
Mm.
are those, basic earth, fire, water, the elements, the five elements. And the reason I want to bring this out is because it takes us back to such an important perspective and appreciation of Ayurveda. Because what Ayurveda is reminding us is that there are fundamental elements, the five elements, and they are in everything. They are in food, they are in every plant, every animal, and they are also making up our own bodies, these elements. So we're all made of the same atoms and molecules, and therefore we're all subject to the same laws of nature that govern all of material creation. And what Ayurveda is doing, it's educating us to be able to live in accord with those laws of nature that govern all of material creation, gravity and electromagnetic fields and all these forces and matter fields that structure matter. We are subject to them as much as the natural world around us. And sometimes we forget that. We think we're separate, and we forget it because we have free will. Human beings have something special, and that is free will. So the birds will naturally eat what they need to eat. They won't eat something that they don't that won't contribute to their health and well-being. They're programmed.
Mm.
At 10 o'clock, as the sun sets, they'll all fly to the trees and roost and go to bed. But human beings can stay up all night long if we so choose. We can eat anything we want if we so choose. So Ayurveda is simply all about letting us know again what choices to make that align ourselves with the evolutionary force of nature that will support our health and vitality and well-being. Instead of trying to go against the current, we end up flowing through life, allowing the current of the evolutionary force of natural law to carry us along. And there's hardly any other place where we see the importance of this than digestion, what we eat, how we eat, what we take in and metabolize that turns into the material that structures our physiology, which means the material that structures our health. So, these are all so important. And when we hear about the tastes and how they're related to the elements and how the elements are what structure everything, then we see all the logic, the perfect logic that Ayurveda provides to explain how to live life and unfold our full potential easily.
So beautiful. When you say, especially when we're flowing, in that value, then what we're really, that flow is really this experience of unity. We are one with nature. There's an experience of unity, and that's really what immunity is. And this is really, when we are talking about immunity, is the ability to resist any disease, any imbalance, because we're established in that state of unity where we're flowing with nature. And a beautiful thing that Dr. Manohar always would say about immunity is he would say, immunity is I am in unity. That's immunity, which is so beautiful. And when we are in that state, then that digestive fire, or Agni as it's known, is very strong. So the ability to digest anything is just being metabolized into that fundamental energy that we're talking about. We can, even link it to bliss, like that everything is being metabolized into that fundamental energy or bliss. And when that is happening and it's very strong, then we might see or experience ojas in the physiology, which is that finest end product of digestion. And if Agni is a little bit weak or affected, maybe the choices that we make, not just in one night, but like maybe continuously, those choices start to affect our physiology. So the Agni can become irregular, or it can become a little bit dull and sluggish.
I
And
want
so
you to wait. I want you to define Agni so that some of our listeners may not be aware
yes,
of that particular term.
this word Agni, it's spelled Agni, Agni. And Agni is translated as that digestive fire. So when we're talking about digestion, that ability to break something down into its finer essence, that is known as Agni, that ability to, transform one thing into something else. So when we think of fire, even if we think of we put something into a fire, it gets maybe reduced to ash. It's transformed from whatever it is into something else. So say we have an apple, the essence of that apple is really just vibrating energy. And so if that Agni or digestive fire is strong, what we're able to do is receive that vibrating energy from that apple, and then have that being broken down and received into the physiology so that every cell is receiving that vitality from the food that we're eating, and that we're able to harness that energy into every single system. So every single system is able to maintain the integrity of its function, the integrity of its structure, for us to always flow in that value of unity, so that anything that's coming, there isn't a wear and tear that's happening to experience that stress from the outside world. The digestive fire is strong for that. So again, that digestive fire meaning anything through any mode of senses. So when we're talking about Agni, we're always talking about digestive strength.
Well, what is so beautiful about Ayurveda? You can start with something as mundane as digesting an apple, eating an apple, and you end up in a cosmic place. You end up with your connection to the universe. You end up with revitalizing every cell in the body with energy and bliss. And it's a very beautiful approach. And as modern medicine is coming around now, coming back to some of these ancient, more than 6,000-year-old principles, it's going to take a while before they appreciate this amazing, holistic, material and spiritual process of digesting experience, digesting food. And the other thing you just brought up that was so interesting was ojas, which again, the finest byproduct of digestion, where it's it's captured the essence in that food, and it's allowed every cell in the body to partake of it, and it creates a healthy kind of glow. You just know people have strong digestion. They just have a very healthy glow that comes from that byproduct called ojas. And that ojas has its connection to soma, which actually moves us into the field of consciousness itself. And that's why now, when we have a consciousness practice and in this case, Ayurveda, Maharishi Ayurveda, we recommend transcendental meditation where we can actually transcend the thinking process and open our awareness to that field of pure consciousness. We are enlivening that value of soma, which is the flow of consciousness into material expression, as ojas. And this is where that incredible strength and ability to take every experience in and process it as bliss, to process it as something nourishing, something evolutionary, something strengthening. So I never expect that we're kind of going to end up here, but almost in every discussion, we end up back in this really beautiful vision of human potential in higher states of consciousness.
So beautiful. And, this really shows that expansion of Ayurveda, like the depth and breadth of it, because you can go so specific as to which foods, which leafy green, which fruit, which spice, you can go to that detail and break it down into the 6 tastes within each food, and, its post-digestive effect, all of that. It goes so specific, but it goes so broad also that, when we are just talking about the food, the diet, we want to start with the highest value of that food, the highest energy value of that food, so that it's organic, that it's fresh, because we want to maximize that vitality that we're receiving. So, in anything, we just want to make sure it's pleasing to the senses, it has that highest value. And then we also want to we might be eating all of that, organic, etc., everything like that. But we also want to think of how we're eating it. Are we eating it with the full attention and love? Are we cooking, with that full attention and love? Because it's also the process. And then we also want to consider, how we're eating. Like, is it too fast? Is my attention on the food? And then even after we eat, just taking a moment before we then jump into the next, allowing every part of that process just to settle before we then go into the
Jump
next
into activity. Yeah.
and then even giving a little bit of gap so that that value of rest is also there, so that there can be full kind of absorption of all the nutrients for the physiology before the next meal. Otherwise, we would have one food and then another and another, and that creates a little bit of strain and stress on the physiology. That's why the practice, as you said, of TM is helping to give that dip into that transcendence, help to digest any stresses. So we come back and the choices that we make are anchored in that value of the absolute. So we start to flow very naturally and easily in the direction of what our body is wanting, what it's craving, in a very, unified, effortless way.
Beautiful. Shankari, let's open it up. I think we've got a number of questions coming in, and that will allow us to bring out even more information. So let's shift over. And Marta Christie, if you can read those questions to us, that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Our first question is from Dan. And Dan is asking if I would like to come to the Raj in January. Do I need to book the exact number of days before I come, or can I book 5 days and extend up to 21 days?
You can book 5 days and then extend. I mean, it's to ensure that the space remains open for 21 days, you might want to book, but you can book for 5 days as you wish. Our schedulers will help you for sure. And Panchakarma is a really great way. Panchakarma is the process of really purifying the body, but in such a gentle, wonderful way, with oil massage and boluses soaked in milk and then applied over the whole body, literally warm oil coming out of like a gentle hose, just drenching you in oil. And as we talked about in our very first webinar, uh, this has an incredible ability to pull out the fat-soluble toxins, which are the most dangerous toxins in our environment, but also the ama. We didn't quite get into ama, but if our digestion is slow or poor, that means we don't fully digest our meal. So what happens to that food that didn't really get fully digested and transformed into nutrients for the whole body? It kind of putrefies and it becomes this very sticky, gummy, toxic substance that ends up lodging in the joints and creating joint pain and contributing to the aging process. So Panchakarma is also very effective in pulling out those toxins as well. But there's something very interesting, and that is toxins, when they've been in the body for a long time, they become part of the structure. So you have to be very careful when you purify the body. When you're pulling the toxins out, you're on some level, in some instances, weakening the structure because it's become part of the structure, the toxins. So you need to be infusing, nourishing elements that are building up the physiology. And those are the herbs that are cured into the oils. And the oil that's copiously used in Panchakarma, in the massages and the various treatments that constitute Panchakarma, they are the carriers of those herbal essences into the tissue beds that then support. So just giving a little bit of background on Panchakarma for those of you who might not know what Dan was referring to. So what, Dan, I hope that was helpful. And what's our next question?
Does that mean that I can simply use the churnas and I will get all 6 tastes? This is not my experience.
Now, the churnas are just a very simple way of, having all the 6 tastes in proportion to a vata dosha or a pitta dosha or kapha dosha. So it's just a simple way that you can sprinkle it on and you have that taste. But just having a variety of spices, a variety of vegetables, variety of grain, whole foods have that value naturally. So it's hard sometimes in a family system when you have so many different people and the proportion. So I just mentioned the churnas as a simple way that everyone can add their own specific flavor, but really it's just thinking about whole foods and as much as possible having a variety and also being in tune with the seasons, and just enjoying that it's not the same thing maybe every day, but we're adding nutrients and colors and textures to our food. Each of that is guiding and strengthening our physiology, each of the tastes like that.
Yeah, it's also the case that the fresher the food is, the more prana. And so your prana is that life energy that's there in all living things. So if the plant you eat is fresher, then it has more of that prana value. And then that too will make you feel more satisfied, more revitalized by the food. So there are degrees of freshness. And as Shankari was saying, of course, you want variety because different minerals and nutrients are there in different foods, and also, yeah, uh, you want to acknowledge the seasons in terms of what foods are in season because they are going to be uh, fresher. They're going to be more recently picked or whatever it is, and therefore, again, there's just more vitality in that food.
Beautiful.
The next question is from Scott, and it says, how about hunger?
Yes, hunger is a very important part of the whole equation. Hunger is referring to our appetite. So when our digestive fire is strong, we might have a strong hunger, because we've fully metabolized and digested the previous meal. The fire is ready for the next meal. So we really do want to be in tune with hunger. Now, you might notice that your hunger changes through the day. You might notice that your hunger changes through the seasons, that, in the winter, when the environment is cold, the internal environment is a little bit higher to compensate. So we might want those heavier foods in the winter, like a nice hearty stew. It doesn't maybe feel as appetizing in the summer to have this hot, hearty stew. We might want something lighter. When the environment is hot, the internal environment is a little bit different. So that's the beauty of Ayurveda, that it's also flowing with the seasons. It's flowing with the time of day. In general, Ayurveda recommends lunch as the main meal. So if we're having something that's a little bit heavier, when the sun is at its highest, the internal fire is also at its strongest. So a general principle is, eat according to your hunger, but lunch as the main meal. And this is when Pitta dosha is a little bit higher. Breakfast and dinner are a little bit lighter. So again, lighter in quality, but we can have sufficient quantity as to nourish us. And at night, we want to also maybe give a little bit of a gap between dinner and bed so that natural digestive process has some time before we go into bed. Otherwise, sometimes we might feel like we're carrying our dinner into bed and waking up with it also kind of still sitting there. So in general, we always listen to our hunger. Some people with different ages, they might be a little bit more hungry, have a higher metabolism. So we always are self-referral. And we also follow some general principles of lunch as the main meal, and eating according to your hunger, giving a little bit of a gap. For some people, that might be 3 hours. For some people, that might be 6 hours. So we just listen to ourselves.
Yeah, you're reminding me that of that other rule, not only to eat your big meal in the middle of the day, but also not to drink ice water with your meals.
Right.
Because as Shankari was saying, Agni is the driver of digestion, and that is digestive fire, because it's the transformative element that's allowing us to break down whatever we've taken in into the material that will nourish our body. So, of course, ice water is just going to put the fire out. So that's a really important rule that I just wish the whole population knew this rule, because it would have such an enormous impact on their ability to digest their food.
Right. Yeah, very simple thing. And even for some people, that might be a hard thing to do, but just even having room temperature
Yeah.
water, just taking the ice out of the equation really can help with that digestive process so much. Otherwise, we're kind of putting out our digestive fire with that ice drink. Yeah.
Yeah, another very interesting point about when Shankari was bringing out keeping that evening meal light. There's a very fascinating process of digestion that happens at night that's much subtler than that process of digestion in the middle of the day that's digesting your biggest meal of the day. It's a very fine digestion that goes in and cleans up the cellular debris, and it cleans the brain. It's getting all those little toxic materials. It's a fine, fine level of digestion. And if you've eaten a big meal, that digestive process has to switch over. It has to go there and try to now digest with less strength. It has less strength. It's a more subtle digestion, and it's being asked to do more than it is really wanting to do, and that is digest your great big meal that you ate before you went to bed. So this going to bed before 10 and this idea of not eating so close to when you go to bed and not eating your heaviest meal at night, all of these things contribute to so many aspects of the functioning of the physiology. And that's where we get back to the fact that gut health and digestion is impacting so many functions in our physiology.
That's right. And I think, in a lot of ways, just to add to that, that right now, intermittent fasting is so big. But really what it does is it's shedding or shining a light on when we're eating. That it's what they're showing is really that when we eat makes a difference in our absorption of foods. And this is something Ayurveda has known, for thousands of years, that when we eat makes a difference. So, eating heavy, oily foods at night, that digestive fire it's much different in how it's able to break that down. It's everything's slowing down. As you said, the birds are going to sleep, nature's quieting down. And the same thing happens with our own physiology, that things are starting to settle, so that when we do sleep, it's still dynamic because that cleaning process is happening, so that when we wake up, we feel fresh at that cellular level. So what we can do to just kind of help honor that is, give the body just that value of rest, whether it's in, just eating a little bit early, getting that proper sleep, having that value of meditation, giving, some pauses during the day before we eat, during our food, after we eat, like that. All of that is honoring that ability to break down all of these experiences coming in, so that everything that we're transforming those experiences into is something that's supporting how we flow with nature.
Beautiful. How are we doing, Marta Christie?
10 more questions.
How many more?
10 more questions.
Oh my. Okay, all right.
Janet is asking, how can I calm my ongoing anxiety so that my digestion works properly?
How can I calm my ongoing anxiety? Yeah, so I think, this is something also just in our relative world right now, is very hard. We wake up and we might hear the news of something, or, just navigating in this world sometimes is challenging in and of itself. So it's not necessarily one thing, because there's so many things coming into our senses, whether it's through our phone, through hearing something, or driving in traffic, or just, family or work related stresses, the world's health in general. All of it can impact us over time also. So you bring out a really beautiful point. I think as you were bringing out so beautifully, Candace, just that connection to the transcendent is really one of that primary ways of experiencing that value of wholeness that we then bring into every single part of our physiology.
Yeah.
Just that alone helps with everything. And then we integrate, into activities. So being around friends, being around knowledge, being around elders, knowledge also is one of the greatest purifiers. There's a beautiful quote that says, "Rite jnana mukti." Knowledge is one of the greatest purifiers because it helps root us into that depth. So surrounding yourself with knowledge of whichever tradition you come from shines that light. In everything that we're eating, we're talking about how we eat, just taking pauses, connecting, pranayama, moving that prana, yogasanas, helping soften those stresses that are lodged in our body. There's so many little things, aromatherapy, which is, so everything that we're smelling, it bypasses the prefrontal cortex, immediately helps to settle us. Gandharva Veda, what we're listening to, that it changes and softens the environment around us. The buildings that we're living in, that they're healthy spaces that are helping, give strength and grounding to our physiology. Massage, abhyanga, that it's known as, it's helping nourish and strengthen and calm our physiology. So there's so many different windows through which we can, experience that light of consciousness. And any one thing helps everything else also. So we don't have to feel like we do it all. Just one.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think the first point that you brought out, Shankari, is so important. And that is that experience of our own transcendental reality. And really, what is that? What does that mean? It sounds so abstract, but really, it's just an experience of being aware of awareness itself. And usually our mind is always moving through the confines of a thought. Doesn't matter if it's a grocery list we're thinking about, or we're thinking about the purpose of life on earth. It doesn't matter if it's a big or small thought, our minds are moving within the confines of that thought. But when we transcend or go beyond the thinking process, which is the whole purpose of transcendental meditation, what happens is we experience simply awareness itself. We're aware of awareness itself. And that is our true universal reality. It's like coming home to who we really are, unbounded and full. And it's a blissful reality. It's the home of the mind. And the mind is always looking for happiness. That's what the mind is looking for all the time. But we're always directing our senses outward. We're always directing our attention outward. I'll find happiness with a new car. I'll find happiness with a new partner. And it brings us happiness for a time, but we're looking for something abiding, an abiding happiness, and it exists within us. And when we have a simple technique that allows us to settle down beyond those worrying thoughts and those anxious feelings, and find something so full within ourselves, this literally transforms our life. It transforms our physiology is nourished in that deep rest of transcending. The body's healing intelligence kicks in. And so the stress is released, the fatigue is released. And as all the stress and anxiety gets released, then we feel more settled, more calm. It's easier to find our way back to who we really are. And so everything Ayurveda recommends is actually for this experience. Everything is to support this experience. Because in the main textbook of Ayurveda, Charaka Samhita, 6,000-year-old at least text, it says health is defined this way: being established in the self with a great big S. And our big S is that unbounded eternal reality of who we are. And so this again, we start with what we're going to eat, and we end up here. We end up with a vision of full potential. We end up with a vision of what a human physiology is made to experience. We end up facing our birthright and taking our birthright back and taking our health and happiness back into our own hands. So I think on this note, we have gone for almost an hour. I think we'll end on this note because it's just so thrilling to come back to such a big picture. And with Ayurveda, no matter where you start, no matter what health issue, no matter what diet consideration, you start there and you end up at home in the universe, at home with yourself, and experiencing what is our birthright, which is to experience happiness 24 hours a day. So thank you, everyone, and all those questions that weren't answered. We will give short answers to them in an email that goes out to everybody so that everyone feels that their questions have been answered. And Marta Christie, if you can just screenshot to make sure we get all the questions, then we'll, Shankari and I will go through them and make sure that you get a nice full answer. And we just want to thank all of you for joining. We're just building such a great family where together we're going to just fathom this amazing knowledge of Ayurveda. And as we said, take our health and happiness back into our own hands. So thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you next month. We'll be sending out the notice for the day and time and for the next guest. And Shankari, thank you so much. You are just a wealth of knowledge, and you are an expression of living happiness every moment of the day. So thank you for being so exemplary for all of us.
Thank you so much, all of you, just the questions and all of that. It's just such a joy to be with such a beautiful family. And I think that I just want to end also just by saying, just it's communities sometimes that can also help support us when we feel impacted by so much of what's going on in the world. So just even this community, just through the questions, just reading it, there's such a joy to hear from all of you, see your names. And that joy is also being digested. So community is also so helpful, just like this, that you're creating with these webinars and with the Raj family. That's also helping nourish and digest all, everything into bliss. So thank you so much. And thank you to everyone. It's a joy.
Bye for now. And thanks again, Shankari.